Marie Antoinette, Part 3, The Trial. It is July 3rd, 1793. Marie Antoinette is in the Temple prison, a converted medieval fortress in the center of Paris. She has been here for almost a year. Her husband was executed 6 months ago. She watched them take him away. She waited for him to come back. He didn't come back. Now they are coming for her son. Louis Charles is 8 years old, separated from his mother, placed under the care of Antoine Simon, a cobbler, a member of the Paris Commune, who will educate the boy in Republican values and strip him of any loyalty to the monarchy. Marie Antoinette fights. She holds on to her son. She refuses to let go. They take him anyway. In Part 1, we saw how Marie Antoinette was stripped of her identity at 14. Taken from Austria, remade into a French queen, placed inside a system that watched her every second. In Part 2, we saw how a propaganda machine was built over 15 years to transform her into a monster. The libelle, the diamond necklace affair, the myths, the nickname Madame Déficit. In this part, we're going to see where all of that leads. We're going to see the trial, and we're going to see what it actually was. Because it wasn't a trial. Not really. It was the execution of a symbol. And the woman underneath that symbol, the 37-year-old widow with white hair and 2 surviving children, was almost irrelevant to what was happening. Almost. Let's start with what happened after Louis XVI died. January 21st, 1793. The king was executed by guillotine at the Place de la Révolution. Marie Antoinette watched them lead him away. She was not allowed to see him again after that morning. The execution of Louis XVI was a watershed moment. It was the point of no return. France had killed its king. The monarchy, as a concept,
as an institution, was finished. There was no going back.
But in the weeks and months that followed, something unexpected happened. The pressure on Marie Antoinette eased. Slightly. The king's death had been the revolution's primary objective. His blood had been spilled. The guards at the temple relaxed. Lawyers and officials who had been constantly visiting the prison to deal with the king's case stopped coming. The royal prisoners, Marie Antoinette, her children, and her sister-in-law, Madame Elisabeth, were left in relative quiet. Marie Antoinette barely spoke. She barely ate.
She refused to go into the prison gardens because to get there she had to walk past her husband's empty chambers.
She was grieving, silently, completely, in the way that people grieve when they have no privacy and no one to grieve with. And for a brief moment, a very brief moment, there was genuine debate about what to do with her. Some revolutionaries wanted her executed immediately. Others proposed using her as a bargaining chip, exchanging her for French prisoners of war held by Austria. Thomas Paine, the American revolutionary, advocated for exile. Send her away. Let her live out her life somewhere else. End the spectacle. It was a reasonable proposal. It would have been the politically pragmatic choice. But Jacques Hébert had other plans. Hébert was a radical journalist and politician, one of the most extreme voices in the revolution. He controlled the Committee of General Security, the body responsible for public safety during the Reign of Terror. Hébert wanted Marie Antoinette dead.
And he wanted her destroyed, publicly, completely, in a way that would serve the revolution's purposes. He began building the case in the spring of 1793. First, they separated Louis Charles from his mother. July 3rd, the scene we opened with. The boy was placed under Antoine Simon's care. Simon's job was clear. Make Louis Charles forget his mother. Make him denounce the monarchy. Make him useful to the revolution. Simon did his job thoroughly. The boy was beaten, manipulated, isolated. He was fed revolutionary slogans. He was told his mother was a monster. He was told his entire life before, the palace, the family, the childhood he remembered, was a lie. He was 8 years old. Over the following weeks, Louis Charles was systematically broken down and rebuilt.
By the time Hébert needed him, the boy had been conditioned to say whatever was required. Marie Antoinette was moved to the Conciergerie in August 1793, a converted medieval palace on the Île de la Cité. Its nickname was the antechamber to the guillotine. Almost everyone who entered it died there. Her cell was small. There was no privacy. Guards watched her constantly. There, she was referred to not as the Queen or even Marie Antoinette, but as prisoner number 280. She was 37 years old, but she looked much older. Her hair had turned white, completely white, from stress and grief. Her skin was pale. She had lost weight. She dressed in plain black and white clothing. The woman who had once been the most glamorous figure in Europe was barely recognizable. And on October 14th, 1793, she was brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal. The trial began at 2 in the afternoon and did not stop for 36 hours. Marie Antoinette and her lawyers had been given less than 1 day to prepare her defense. Her counsel, 2 lawyers named Chauveau-Lagarde and Tronçon du Coudray, were appointed hastily. They had almost no time, almost no access to the evidence, and almost no ability to challenge witnesses. The jury was composed entirely of men. 12 jurors, all male, all selected by the revolutionary authorities. The outcome, according to most historians, had already been decided. The Committee of Public Safety had determined Marie Antoinette would die. The trial was a formality, a public performance designed to legitimize a decision that had already been made. But it was a performance that mattered, because the charges that were read out in that courtroom were not random. They were carefully constructed, and they told a very specific story about who Marie Antoinette was, or rather, who she had been made into. The charges were 7 in number. The first, that she had depleted the national treasury by sending millions of livres to Austria to fund the war against France.
The second, that she had conspired against the liberty of the French nation, compared explicitly in the indictment to Catherine de' Medici and Bruno, 2 queens from French history who had been accused of scheming and poisoning. The third, that she had sought to starve the people of France in 1789. The fourth, that she had incited the murders that occurred on October 5th and 6th, 1789, when crowds marched on Versailles and forced the royal family to move to Paris. The fifth, that she had, in concert with other figures, caused the killing of National Guards at the Champ de Mars in 1791. The sixth, that she had convinced Swiss soldiers to fire on the people on August 10th, 1792. And the seventh charge, with having, like another Agrippina, forgotten that she was a mother in order to commit incest with her son. Read that again. They accused Marie Antoinette, formally, in a courtroom, before a jury, of sexually abusing her 8-year-old son. The charge was based on testimony from Louis Charles himself. The boy had been coached. Antoine Simon had spent weeks preparing him. The boy had been forced, under conditions of isolation, fear, and systematic psychological manipulation, to sign a statement accusing his mother of incest. He was 8 years old. He had been separated from his mother 3 months earlier. He had been beaten and terrorized into compliance by the man who was supposed to be educating him. The charge was designed to achieve one specific thing. It was designed to make Marie Antoinette unspeakable, undefendable. A figure so morally repugnant that no one in the courtroom, no juror, no spectator, no citizen of France could defend her. It was the ultimate weaponization of the libelles. All those years of pornographic pamphlets, all those fabricated accusations of sexual depravity had been building toward this. The trial took the fantasies of the gutter press and turned them into a formal legal charge. And it almost worked. Almost. Because when the charge was read out, when Hébert, the prosecutor, presented his evidence of incest, something happened in that courtroom that no one had predicted. The prosecution's case had been faltering. The earlier charges,
conspiracy, financial ruin, incitement to violence were difficult to prove. Witnesses contradicted each other. Evidence was thin. Even some members of the jury were uncomfortable.
Hébert played his strongest card, the incest accusation. And Marie Antoinette's composure, the careful, dignified silence she had maintained throughout the proceedings, broke. Not in fear, not in tears, in fury. "Did you witness it?" she snapped at Hébert. He had not. The tribunal's president turned to her. He asked why she had refused to answer the charge. Marie Antoinette rose from her chair, and she said, "If I have not replied, it is because nature itself refuses to respond to such a charge laid against a mother." Then she turned to the gallery. "To the women in the courtroom, I appeal to every mother here." The courtroom erupted. Women in the gallery shouted. They called out for the proceedings to be stopped. There was a genuine physical disturbance. The ushers and the bench demanded silence. It took time to restore order. The charge had backfired. Not enough to save her, but enough to reveal something important. The people in that room, the ordinary people, the women especially, could see what was happening. They could see that the charge was monstrous, that it was designed not to seek justice, but to destroy. And Marie Antoinette, in that moment, was not a symbol. She was a mother. The trial continued through the night. At 4:30 in the morning of October 16th, 1793, after 36 hours of proceedings, the jury delivered its verdict. Guilty on all charges. The sentence was death. Marie Antoinette's lawyers had believed the worst possible outcome would be life imprisonment. They had argued, behind closed doors, that executing the mother of 2 surviving children would be politically dangerous, that it would create a martyr, that it would unite Europe against France. They were wrong. The decision had been made long before the trial began. Now it was time to carry it out. The morning of October 16th, Marie Antoinette had been awake most of the night. At 7 in the morning, her maid entered her cell and found her lying on the bed, her hand on her cheek, facing the window. She was wearing a black dress. She ate almost nothing, a few mouthfuls of broth. At 8 o'clock, guards entered the cell. They told her to change into a plain white dress. White was the color traditionally worn by widowed queens of France. She changed in front of them, in front of men, guards watching. It was not unlike the remise ceremony. 23 years earlier, on an island in the Rhine, a 14-year-old girl had been stripped of everything she wore, every piece of Austrian clothing, every possession, and redressed in French garments, watched by strangers, humiliated by protocol. Now, at 37, in a prison cell, she was stripped again of her black mourning dress, of whatever dignity remained. Then the executioner came. His name was Henri Sanson. He was the son of the man who had executed Louis XVI 10 months earlier. The revolution recycled its executioners. Sanson cut Marie Antoinette's hair, the white hair, the hair that had turned white in prison from grief and stress. He cut it short, close to the scalp, so the guillotine blade would fall cleanly. Then he bound her hands behind her back with a rope and put a leash around her neck. A leash, as if she were an animal. She was led out of the conciergerie and placed in an open wooden cart, not a closed carriage, the way Louis XVI had been transported to his execution. An open cart, exposed, visible to everyone along the route. The cart moved slowly through the streets of Paris, deliberately slowly. The journey took about an hour. Crowds lined the streets. They shouted, they jeered. Some came to see the spectacle. Some came out of genuine hatred. Some, and this is documented, came simply because it was happening and they wanted to witness history. Marie Antoinette did not cry out. She did not beg. She did not collapse. She rode in the cart with her hands tied behind her back and a rope around her neck, and she looked at the city she had lived in for 23 years. She said nothing.
The cart arrived at the Place de la Révolution, now called the Place de la Concorde, at around noon. The guillotine stood on a raised platform. Tens of thousands of people were gathered. Soldiers surrounded the scaffold. A giant statue of Liberty stood on a pedestal that had once held a statue of Louis XV. In Liberty's right hand was a pike. On her head, a Phrygian cap. Marie Antoinette climbed the scaffold steps without help. Her hands were tied. She managed it herself. As she walked across the platform toward the guillotine, she stepped on the executioner's foot. She stopped. She turned to him. "Pardon me, sir," she said. "I did not do it on purpose." These were her last words. Then she was tied to the bench. The blade fell at 12:15 in the afternoon. Sanson lifted her head and showed it to the crowd. The crowd erupted. "Vive la République!" with mounting horror. Some spectators rushed forward to soak their handkerchiefs in her blood. Souvenirs. Her body was placed in an unmarked grave. It would not be moved to the royal crypt at Saint-Denis until 1815, after the monarchy was restored. Marie Antoinette was 37 years old. She had been in France for 23 years. She had been queen for 18. She had been a prisoner for 1 year and 2 months. She had been separated from her son for 3 months. And now she was dead. But here is what we need to understand about what happened on October 16th, 1793. The trial of Marie Antoinette was not about justice. It was not about accountability. It was not about finding the truth and punishing wrongdoing. It was about making the revolution permanent. The revolution needed enemies. It needed proof that the old regime had been not just flawed, but evil. That the people who had lived under it, the aristocrats, the royals, the entire system, were corrupt beyond redemption. Marie Antoinette served that purpose perfectly. She was foreign. She was female. She was a mother. And the incest charge made her monstrous in a way that went beyond politics. It made her a violation of nature itself. Her trial took the libelle, the pornographic pamphlets, the gossip, the fabricated scandals of 15 years, and gave them legal weight. The accusations that had existed as gutter press fiction became formal charges in a courtroom. The myths became evidence. And when she was executed, the revolution had what it needed: a symbol, a cautionary tale. A warning to anyone who might look back at the monarchy and think, maybe it wasn't so bad. Marie Antoinette became that warning for centuries. But let's look at what was actually erased. The girl who arrived in France at 14, stripped naked on an island, remade into someone else's version of a queen. The young woman who spent 7 years failing at the one task that justified her existence at court. Not because she was broken, but because her husband was. The mother who loved her children with a devotion that was unusual for her era. Who said, when her first daughter was born, that a daughter was hers to keep, because a son would have belonged to the state. The woman who became quieter through the 1780s, who spent less, who dressed simply, who was changing, in ways that no pamphlet would ever report. Because pamphlets don't cover the boring, unglamorous work of becoming a different person. The queen who had nothing to do with the diamond necklace affair, who refused the necklace, who was framed by a confidence trickster and destroyed by a public that wanted to believe the worst. The widow who barely ate, barely spoke after her husband was killed, who haunted the corridors of a prison, refusing to walk past his empty rooms. The mother who fought, physically fought, when they came to take her son. All of that was erased. What remained was Madame Deficit, the Austrian bitch. The woman who said, "Let them eat cake," a quote that was never hers. What remained was the symbol. And symbols, as we said at the beginning of this series, are much harder to kill than people. Marie Antoinette has been dead for over 200 years. And the myths about her, the myths that were deliberately created to destroy her, are still alive, still believed, still repeated. Let them eat cake. Still attributed to her in every culture, in every language. The extravagant, callous queen who didn't care about the people she ruled.
Still the default version of Marie Antoinette in the popular imagination. The propaganda worked. It worked so well that it survived her executioners. It survived the revolution itself. It survived centuries of scholarship and historical research. It survived because it told a story that people wanted to hear. A story about arrogance, about excess, about a woman who deserved what happened to her. But she didn't deserve it. Not because she was perfect. She wasn't. She made mistakes. She was, at times, genuinely out of touch with the reality of the country she was supposed to serve. But she didn't deserve to have her son weaponized against her. She didn't deserve to be accused of crimes that were fabricated. She didn't deserve to be executed on the basis of charges that the entire courtroom, including some of her accusers, knew were lies. She didn't deserve to be erased, and that is what this series has been about. Not about excusing Marie Antoinette, not about rehabilitating her reputation, about seeing what actually happened, about understanding how power works, not just the power of kings and queens, but the power of narrative, the power of stories to create reality, the power of propaganda to transform a person into a thing. Marie Antoinette was not a symbol. She was a woman. She was 14 years old when they took her from Vienna. She was 37 years old when they took her head. And in between, she lived a life that was far more complicated, far more human than the myth has ever allowed. History without romance, power without filters. This has been her empire. If this series changed how you think about Marie Antoinette, or about how propaganda works, share it. Tell someone. Leave a comment. Subscribe. And the next time someone says, "Let them eat cake," remember, she never said it. But the fact that we still believe she did